youth and families during this sort of unique time that we are in, where many folks are at home, where schools are out, where oftentimes people are working sometimes from home. Maybe they're not. But at the same time, we're finding ourselves much more often secluded and away from other people. So I wanted to take this time, especially since right now our church is temporarily closed with regard to Sunday worship and even midweek kind of programmings and the comings and goings that we would normally have, to be able to share with you some thoughts, especially about this coming Sunday. And one of the texts overall that has a very particular importance, I think, to it, especially as it relates to young people, but even to families and adults these days. One of the texts for this coming Sunday happens to be the Old Testament text of 1 Samuel in chapter 16, verses 1 through 13. And you should be able to see that on your screen right now overall. But one of my favorite parts about this is that Samuel has taken upon the task that God's given him to anoint David as the next king of Israel. Saul had been the king, and now Samuel is going to anoint David. And as he goes to do that, he first thinks that maybe this person named Eliab should be the next king, or would be the next king. And he looks at him and bases his kind of judgment upon his outward appearance. And one of my all-time favorite passages of Scripture comes from this text in verse 7, where it says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." This is probably one of the greatest overall issues that we have within our culture, especially for young people, for teenagers, for even children in elementary school. But I think for those that find themselves in middle school and high school, this is a particular issue of where judgment is oftentimes passed upon people based solely upon their outward appearance, where they may not even know the person, they may have never even spoken to them, they may not even know their name, but they pass some kind of judgment, positive or negative, upon them based solely upon the types of clothes they wear, the style, maybe how much money they spend. Are they designer clothes? Are they tall? Are they short? Are they thin, skinny? Are they not thin or skinny? And people base oftentimes their whole opinion upon people solely upon those particular things. But one of the things we begin to find out is that when it comes to spiritual matters, when it comes to our relationship with God, God doesn't look at any of those kinds of things. He doesn't care if we bought something at one store versus another store. He doesn't look at how much we spent on it. He doesn't look at whether someone is struggling with their weight, or whether they are normal, or whether they're skinny. He doesn't look at whether they're tall, doesn't look at whether they're short. He looks on the inside versus the outward appearance. And this is where I think it's critical for us, in many ways, for self-esteem, for our own well-being, but especially for our spiritual lives, which should be even more important than all of those other things going around us, that we understand that God is looking at our hearts, at what's on the inside. God continues to think about us in relation to the characteristics of those things that connect us with God overall. The places where we're able to find God's will, where we're able to listen, where we're able to focus upon what it is that God really desires for us. Sometimes we call that calling, but it also has to do with just our daily lives and how we go about within our attitudes and within our thinking, within our approach to other people, our willingness to help, our willingness to be a part of all that God is doing right before us. So I wanted to give you a couple of resources. You can either print these out, or you can actually look at them on the screen and actually take the opportunity to print them out and write on them. But one of them is actually just a drawing of sort of a stick person, generic figure, and one is a drawing of a heart. And you could either think about this or actually literally write it out on a piece of paper if you print it out. Looking at the individual or the outline of a person, we would want to write those things that we do on a daily basis to portray ourselves to other people. What is it that we do every morning as we get ready to leave? Now, some of these are just common sense things, but sometimes the things that we do, if we really list them out and we're honest, we'll find that some of them we're maybe doing for other reasons overall. When we look at how much time we might spend versus the time we would spend doing something else. If we look at the time that we might spend in getting ready for a particular event, we might need to look good, want to look good. We may have to be professional, or it might just be a day at school where we're wearing jeans or something else. But oftentimes, we intentionally undergo that process in order to either impress people or not. Sometimes that's in the back of our minds. So write down on that, or at least think in the back of your minds, what is it that we do that shows sort of our outward appearance overall. Then within the heart, I want you to write the things that would connect us with God. What are those characteristics that we have that help us to have a heart for God, or to even be said by God as individuals to have a heart like God overall? Maybe to even, it could be said to even have the mind of Christ overall. So in the heart, those would be the kinds of things that we would want to write down. So as I leave you with that, I'm also going to share with you, you can find those two resources to print out on our website under Connect and under Youth, and you're going to find a section there where you can actually print those resources out and have them at home in order to do this lesson. Also, there's a second sheet for you where you can actually think about some of the text from 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, even from the Psalms, where you can maybe find some of these characteristics or expressions of what it is that made David have a heart for God, or even be said to have, or even be said to be a person after God's own heart. And as you look at those, it gives you an opportunity to maybe compare what we listed over in the heart. What did we say about ourselves that we see as being important to connecting us with God? Now, this is not an exhaustive list. It also doesn't mean that the things we write in the heart are not valid or important to God. It just means that these things that we find in Scripture sometimes are pointers or maybe focal places that give us hints of how it is that God would really desire for us to live our daily lives. Some of these actual characteristics or potentials that God would like for us to have that match up with other people that we're seeking to do the exact same things that we do each and every day, and that's just live for God the best that we can. So I'm going to leave you with these, and again, you can find them on the First Pres website, which is www.firstpresgreenville.org. Then you can go to Connect and go to Youth, and you'll find where you can actually download these as PDFs. Our prayers are with you. I miss you, and we are still here. If there are things that you or your family need, feel free to text or to call, and we look forward to being able to be back together as soon as possible. Have a great day.